Hello friend, welcome to my official 2020 bullet journal flip through. I know you may have been expecting a December plan with me today, so my setup for the final month will be included at the end of the video. But before we get there, I thought it would be fun to take a little look back at my journal and how it's progressed over the year now that it's almost complete. I have made a plan with me video for every month on this channel so far, so I will link that playlist in the card above in case you would like to check it out. Now without further ado, let's get started! Here is my yearly overview spread. My intention with these pages was to set little goals for myself each month and to recognize the small accomplishments that I made during the time. I am a very goal-oriented person, but as you can see, as the year has progressed, I stopped filling out these pages. I think that as I get further into my journal over the year, I am just less likely to flip all the way back to the very front. I don't know if this is laziness or if I happen to forget about it, but I suppose yearly overviews maybe just don't work as well for me as I'd like them to. Maybe in my next bullet journal for 2021, I will just completely forego the yearly overview. 20 things done in 2020. This was such a simple spread, yet I love its significance. It's just a fun way to look back at all the things that I have done this year. Now this is a spread that I did come back to, despite me just saying that, it felt like such a hassle to flip all the way to the front of my bullet journal. Maybe it was the simplicity of this spread that made it a lot less daunting to fill out, and I just enjoyed looking back at all the cool memories I've made. I have just one more line left to fill out before the year is complete and before this spread is complete. My goals and resolutions page. I'm not really a fan of how I did this one. The title has some rather weird alignment going on up there, but aside from that, I think the only resolution I've stuck to was posting on my YouTube channel. Well, here's to setting some more attainable goals in the next year. On this page was my original January cover. Now, I began to create my January spreads with this habit tracker page, but I just wasn't really feeling the whole look of it all. I was trying to go for a more minimalist look, and it didn't feel like me. I think at the time I was consuming a lot of minimalist spreads on social media, and I thought it would be cool to try it out myself, but I have maximalist tendencies and I can't deny it. So I decided to completely scrap that idea, and on the next page I went on to make a spread to track all of the entertainment I consumed during the year. I know, weird skip in content, but at the start of this journal, I just didn't have too much of a structure. I just went on making whatever spreads I felt like. I actually like how this spread turned out. The color scheme and the cute characters, it was very nice. Although I didn't really get the spacing right for each section. I ended up filling the movie section in before March was even over. And while I did listen to several podcasts this year, I didn't finish any. A lot of them are still ongoing. If I were to bring back this spread, I would need a new and improved version for 2021. Here I wrote a letter to my future self at the beginning of 2020. I will be reading this once again and responding to it on the very last day of 2020, on the last page of my journal. I'm so excited to read that. This is where I retried my January section with a new cover page. It is still simple, but this time I was much more on board with the color palette and theme I chose. I really like how I did this monthly overview. I have my goal of the month in the top corner and all of my trackers beneath it. I like how the calendar also doesn't completely dominate the spread. It feels like the spread has a really nice balance. I made a January playlist page of some of my most frequently listened to songs of the month. And next to it, I have this spread of what is essentially my monthly favorites. Looking back at my interests almost a year ago, it's kind of funny to see what things I've lost interest in already and what things my love has only grown for. I'm not going to go into it too much about each of my monthly and weekly spreads, as I've already spoke in greater detail about them in my monthly setup videos. But in January, because I was on winter break and I had a lot more time, I just made a bunch of extra spreads at the end of the month. I quite like this one. I wrote down a list of simple things that are cute and positive to look back on whenever I was feeling down. Yes, so pure. To round out the month, I made this weekly overview of my school schedule for the spring semester. Here we begin my February spreads. At the back of this month's section, I made a page for a master to-do list. I find these to be some of my most helpful spreads because I can keep track of everything that needs to get done before I decide upon where in the week I will actually do it. Next to it, I have a little calligraphy check to see how much I was improving on it at the time, and I'm very proud to say that my calligraphy has come quite some way since February. This page I filled with some random washi tape swatches I had purchased from AliExpress recently. And on the adjacent page, I actually participated in a fun lettering challenge that I found on Instagram during the month. Though I didn't post any pictures with the hashtag or anything, it was a really fun way to challenge myself to come up with different lettering styles for a word every day. And I had hoped to maybe incorporate some of these fonts into later spreads. Although I did mostly end up sticking with the same fonts throughout my journal. And now we have arrived at March. March was a wild month, to say the least. This is actually my birthday month, and usually I am not one to celebrate my birthday too extravagantly, but because it fell in the middle of spring break this year, my friends had convinced me to go all out. Okay, not really all out, but we made a few fun plans for spring break. But spring break was actually the week in which the coronavirus really started to take off in the US. So the latter half of the month was actually spent moving out of my college dorm and going back home, amidst a bunch of chaos and uncertainty. I feel like even some of my weekly spreads here reflect that sentiment. I also wrote quite a long journal entry here reflecting on the whole situation and trying to sort out my mind. April was the first month in which I did not heavily rely on the color pink for my theme. I really like this more natural theme that I tried out here. It's definitely nice to have a bit of variety in my journal. This was also the first month in which I started leaving some of my spreads incomplete. I think it was because I was at home all of a sudden and I was just focusing on trying to adjust to the new online school system that I didn't focus too hard on some of my spreads. May has to be one of my favorite themes in this journal. Yes, I know we are back to another pink look, but I love how it turned out when I used this color paper for the background of my cover page. It really looks as if I am beginning a new section of my journal, and I think in general this warm pink aesthetic is what I tend to go for in every other aspect of my life. Actually, I am quite proud of myself for not purchasing anything that I put on this list. I came up with this idea when I was craving some shop therapy in hopes of feeling even a shred of normalcy at the time, but I'm very glad that I resisted needlessly spending my money here. The end of May marked the end of my spring semester. So once again, with more time, I decided to make a few more reflection spreads and extra entries than I had in the months prior. You can probably tell by now, but I have a thing for self-reflection. June is another breath of fresh air in terms of theme variants in this journal. This theme screams summer, and I love all the My Neighbor Totoro screenshots that I incorporated into it. As of now, it still reigns supreme in my heart as the top Ghibli film. These two spreads were unfortunately left incomplete. I started taking my summer courses this month, and those basically occupied all of my time. So you will definitely start to notice some of my spreads becoming less filled out as time progressed. Yeah, I didn't even get to filling out this month review. July was one of my least favorite months in terms of themes. I talked about it a bit in my setup video, but I was not feeling inspired at the time. This was when I was starting to feel really overwhelmed with school, and I filled any spare time that I had with playing Animal Crossing New Horizons. After acquiring the Nintendo Switch at the end of June, that is pretty much what my summer revolved around. It's kind of funny to see how these parts of my year can be seen directly reflected in my bullet journal. I think even the lack of completion reveals just as much about how I was feeling at the time as a comprehensive reflection entry would. After my bullet journaling slump in July, I felt reinvigorated for August. I tried out this purple theme, and I really loved this new look I was going for. Something about it felt so fresh and almost nostalgic. But once again, I found myself not keeping up with my trackers. I think this was the week in which my summer semester ended, and I only had a weekend of recovery time before the fall semester begun. So I really just cleared out my entire to-do list here. I really did enjoy this theme though, so it's a bit of a shame that I didn't fully utilize it this month. My theme for September was one that was in the spirit of the back-to-school season. I put this to-do list out here next to the cover with the intention of it serving as another master to-do list, like I did with the one all the way back in February. But I think because I put it outside my September section instead of inside with all my trackers and stuff, kind of forgot about it out here. Usually this is where I would write the reflection page for my previous month, so I would have no reason to flip back out here. Yeah, definitely a note to future self. I need to put these to-do lists on the inside with the rest of my monthly content. I also used all vertical layouts like this for my weekly spreads. I find these to work the best for me when planning because I can easily visualize how the entire week looks like on a calendar. For some reason, this system is just what resonates most with me, and sometimes if I'm feeling up to it, I will even make a timetable out of it. So these boxes are very versatile and serve me well in this bullet journal. I think October along with July were my least favorite themes in this bullet journal. I do like how this cover page turned out though. It really puts me in the cozy autumn spirit with all the colors and the leaves. I just want to curl up with a blanket and a candle burning. But there's something about this monthly overview and even how I did my weekly spreads this month that just didn't appeal so much to me. When it comes to weekly spreads, I went back to this horizontal box layout. And now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure the system I used for July was set up like this as well. I think I just prefer the up and down boxes more for planning. So whenever I made these types of boxes, I just wasn't as inclined to fill them out. The reason why I kept changing up the weekly spreads for each month was that I didn't want to have the same spread layout all the time. But I think my priority should be in functionality over the visual appeal. I need to stick with these systems that actually aid me when it comes to planning, rather than sacrificing what works for aesthetic. I think my October reflection page was actually my most favorite page in this month's setup. I like how I did the layering with the title up here. Lastly, we have reached the month of November. In my most recent bullet journal setup, I went back to my May idea for this cover, but this time I introduced a baby blue background to it. I have to say that this theme and cover are one of my most favorites that I have ever done. It's something completely out of my comfort zone, yet it resonates completely with my personality. It was fun to experiment with a bunch of different colors and this whole theme of video games. Using so many different colors, especially primary colors that are so vibrant, was definitely a challenge, but it was a challenge that I am very glad I took because I really am satisfied with how it turned out. I admit that when it came to my trackers for this month, I did not stick to any of these things I wrote. My focus for this month was to finish all of my final projects and wrap up the last few weeks of my fall semester. So unfortunately, those habit tracker health bars look dangerously low. It was a really cool concept, and I would love to have seen these filled out a lot more, but alas, that is not what happened. I also like how these red bubble letter titles just seem to pop off the pages. The primary color combination is just a really fun one to play with, and I probably will have to go back to it at least for 1 month in my next bullet journal. For my weekly setups, I learned from my October layout and went back to the vertical setup that I was most comfortable with. And just as I suspected, I did get much more use out of these pages. And I like how I added these extra pages of colored paper. It definitely brought something new and bright to my weekly spreads, which can get a little boring and repetitive when I am sticking with this same vertical box setup. And with the end of my journal quickly approaching, it also saved me some extra pages for my December setup and my end of the year spreads. Now that we have flipped through an entire 11 months in my bullet journal, it is time to fill in the final month. For December's theme, I am going with the color of coffee. I was inspired by these images of cafe drinks and cats that I've been seeing all over my Instagram feed recently. For those of you who do not know, yes, I have started using my Instagram account again. I posted on it a bit over the summer, then I got caught up in school and IRL stuff and somehow forgot about it until only a few weeks ago. But now I am back to regularly using it, so be sure to check it out if you're interested. Anyway, for this theme, I am layering these images over each other with some double-sided tape. For the majority of the year, I had been using a glue stick to secure all of the images I used into my journal. But recently, I got my hands on some double-sided tape, and I love how fast and easy it is. Honestly, now that I've gotten double-sided tape, there's no way I'd ever go back to using a glue stick. It doesn't rumple or curl the pages as well, which was definitely one of the biggest drawbacks in using the glue stick. Another thing I noticed while I was flipping through my bullet journal is that I did not do a whole lot of drawing in my spreads this year. In past bullet journals, I have incorporated a lot more drawing into it, so for this final month, I wanted to bring that back. I know I relied heavily on pictures that I printed out to fill in most of the spaces of my pages, so I thought it would be fun to spice things up. I went ahead and drew in these leaves that were clearly inspired by the drawings on this backdrop I am using for today's video. Usually I have my classic pink bedsheet sitting beneath my bullet journal for these videos, but I wanted to try something different for the final one this year. After the title page, I am beginning my weekly spreads already. Yep, no monthly overviews, no trackers. I am just making my weekly to-do list. And that is because I am on winter break for the whole month. I just submitted my final assignments of the fall semester, and now I can finally relax. It's like I have finally reached the light at the end of the tunnel. So in terms of my bullet journal, I am taking things easy this month. I'm only going to set up the very first week of it now, as I plan to set up the rest of my weeks right before they approach. I actually did this back when I first began bullet journaling several years ago, and it was nice to be spontaneous with the setups so I wouldn't have to produce a bunch of layout ideas all at once. But doing that is something that can only be done when I had a lot more time on my hands. And because this month I actually have that time, I plan on using my bullet journal leisurely. As for the rest of the pages, I plan on filling them out with some end-of-the-year reflections and favorites. Just some fun spreads that I can use to look back on the year with. And with that, I want to thank you so much for joining me today as I flipped through and filled out some of the last few spreads in my bullet journal. I hope your year ends on a good note. Take care, friend.